Today we're going to be talking about 3 things that cause most bass players to stay stuck. So stay tuned. The number one thing, belief system. You guys, if you've been here a while, you know I talk a lot about the belief system. You believe that this is the best you can do. You don't believe that you can be better than what you are, or you believe that some other people are way more advantaged than you, or they have more opportunity. It's like a whole bunch of stuff. You fill in the blank of what it is, and how you know if you're struggling with a bad belief system. Monitor what you say a lot of the times. When it comes to you and your playing, monitor the things you say. You can have a faulted belief system, like a faulty belief system, in terms of like you can believe some of it, but the other part of you saying like, I don't know, like I can do that. Like that's when I started learning Victor Wooten stuff. It's like I think I learned the Amazing Grace harmonic solo, and it's like I can do that, but that other stuff I don't know if I can do that. In my mind, maybe I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind I believed it. And this is how you know you believe it: when you don't attempt to do it. You'll say stuff like, man, that's out of my league right there. When you say stuff like that, immediately you put a cap on top of how far you can go as a musician, because you've already said like, I can't do that. And I'm not picking on you, because I'm guilty of it. I've done it many times. You know, some of the stuff that I've written over the years as a solo bassist is like, if I had heard that stuff maybe 20 years ago, it's like, that's out my lane, doc. I'm gonna let y'all have that. Yeah, we'll use that excuse. I'm gonna hold a pocket. You know, bass players are notorious for using that to almost give yourself a scapegoat for not having to learn any of that extra stuff. Like, yeah, I'm gonna stay in the pocket. I'm not gonna do too much of that. Your belief system, that's the number one thing. And how you can start to overcome that belief system is, number one, start challenging. Start challenging what you believe, because again, like I said, you know if it's a belief system problem because you don't even attempt to try it. Well, how do we reverse that? Try it. The song that you hear that you feel it's out of your reach, or like, I can't do that, that's challenge yourself by trying it, right? Challenge yourself. All right, so the number 2 reason that I think bass players are stuck, number 2 is motivation. Once I finally got to Georgia and I saw how everything was a lot faster, meaning, you know, I'm from Mississippi. We chill. Everything is laid back in Mississippi. You know, it does shout music about as exciting as you're gonna get. Now it's picked up a lot more, but back in the day, it was not as moving as it was, for lack of better words. And so getting here, everybody is like on 10, and like what was considered good musicians in Mississippi, you come to Atlanta and you okay, you mediocre. If you was excellent in Mississippi, then you're good in Atlanta, if you get my drift. So it's like the scales are a little different down here. So I found that out really quick. Like when I got here, it's like, wait a minute, I gotta catch up. Like I'm years behind, and I didn't know it until I got here. So all that being said, what does that have to do with motivation? All right, so I started getting gigs. Main gig in general, I landed a church gig at one of the largest churches down here right after Daryl Freeman. If any of you guys know who Daryl Freeman is, if you don't know who he is, look him up. He's a beast. But anyway, so the gig that I got, he was the last person on that gig. So you already know that the heat was on. You know, I'm coming down here straight from Mississippi, country boy. I wasn't used to everything like I am now. And Daryl at the time was on every gospel record looked like that was coming out, you know, and he was the guy. Still is the guy, you know what I'm saying? But at that time, he was like, you know, prime time, right? As far as it pertains to bass players. So the motivation for me in that moment is you got to come with it. You got to catch up fast. Your job is riding on it, right? I just married this little pretty little thing from Mississippi, and you know, I had to figure out a way to take care of her. And so this church gig is the main gig that I got, and it was a good gig, and it's like the ideal base gig for anybody to have, you know. And so that my motivation was like, I got to keep this gig. Here's my other motivation. I knew, and I was honest with myself, I knew I was one of the weakest links in the band, and I hated that feeling. So when you realize who you are, where you are, like, you have to do something about it, or you know you're gonna get left behind, so to speak. I had to do my homework. I started listening to records. I started digging for stuff. I literally studied Daryl Freeman, not to become a clone of his, but I'm having to walk into this place and fill his shoes. So I started watching. I started listening to almost every record he played on, because I wanted to understand his approach. I wanted to understand, okay, what makes him, other than the fact that he's a beast, like what makes that? What makes people want that? What makes people keep calling on him to play all these records? What is the thing that he has? And so I started just figuring out stuff little by little. I started figuring it out, and I didn't only study him. I studied other bass players. I studied Maurice Fitzgerald, tons of other bass players, and of course in the jazz side, I started studying many bass players there, and always hearing these people and hearing how far they were, and it's like, man, they're light years ahead of me, and I got to catch up. So my motivation is, I got to catch up, and I didn't have the luxury of saying, okay, that's out of my league, that's out of my range. No, you're in a gig that you're required to come up to a certain level, and that makes up all the difference in the world in terms of you growing when you're in a place that requires you to come to a certain level. Because if you're trying to stay where you are or where you've been comfortable with being, then you're gonna go down in flames. Once you get in the right environment, it changes your perspective, your perception of everything. That's why I feel like it's important to play out with people. You know, you got to get out of the four walls. It's good that you work on things within your own practice space, but your environment pushes you, it stretches you, because you got to be honest in an environment. You don't get to start the tape or the track over and go back from the beginning because you messed up. No, you got to keep going. That environment pulls that out of you. So most people sit at home and they work and they work and they work, and it's like, once I learn this, I'll be good. And then once I learn that, no, you got to take what you know, you have to apply it real time. You have to deal with the mistakes, learn how to rebound from the mistakes, get up, dust yourself, all of those things. And so for a person, because I know the question is going to come up, I done gave you the 3 reasons. So the belief system is number 1, motivation is number 2, and the environment is number 3. So how do we fix all of these things to get to the point? Change the 3 and you change everything. Change your belief system. Change your motivation. Like what's the motivation behind what you're doing? Then you change your environment. Well, so here's the question that I was trying to get to that I know somebody's going to have. It's like, well, Jermaine, what do I do if I'm not in a place where I can change my environment like that? Well, I'm not in a place where I'm being pushed by other musicians. Well, you got to become what you don't have. I know that's like easy for me to say, but even now, like I don't still play the same gig. I played that gig for 12 years. But at some point, even with that helped to kind of shape my mindset and to help me to change. But it was ultimately me making the decision like, hey, bro, this is not going to work. You know, because even in a high level environment, you can still get complacent, because once you finally get to a certain level of playing where it's natural for you to do a certain thing, and it's like, okay, now that you're at this level, you technically can chill, because it's like, you know, you're keeping up, you're playing sweet stuff when you need to play sweet stuff, and nobody's complaining, so you're good. But there comes another thing that you have to push beyond that and say, no, this is unacceptable. You don't measure yourself up against what everybody else says is acceptable for you. You measure yourself up against the potential that you know you have.